She's not pretty enough to be my Luna. Her mate said it at the mating ceremony in front of the entire pack. Thea stood at the altar in her mother's dress. The lace yellowed with age, but still beautiful. She'd spent hours on her hair, pinning wildflowers into the braids her mother used to make. The moon was full overhead, the pack gathered in a circle around them, and Alpha Dorian stood across from her with his hand extended. She'd waited her whole life for this moment. 23 years of being invisible, of being the quiet girl who helped in the kitchens, who mended clothes and asked for nothing. And then the moon goddess had chosen her. Her as mate to the Alpha. It felt like a dream. It was about to become a nightmare. Dorian's hand dropped. His lip curled. The pack went silent. "I can't do this," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at her. She's plain, mousy, not pretty enough to stand beside an Alpha." His eyes raked over her, clinical and cold. The moon goddess made a mistake. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Thea's heart stopped. "I, Dorian Hale, Alpha of the Crescent Moon Pack, reject you, Thea Morven, as my mate and Luna." The bond snapped. Pain tore through her chest like claws ripping her open from the inside. She gasped, stumbling, clutching at her ribs as if she could hold herself together. The pack stared. Some looked away. Others whispered behind their hands. Not pretty enough. Plain. Mousy. She ran. Her mother's dress caught on branches as she fled into the forest, tears blurring her vision. She didn't know where she was going. Away. Anywhere. The pain in her chest was unbearable, a physical wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. She collapsed at the border, the line where pack territory ended and the wild lands began. No one would follow her here. No one would even look for her. She curled into the dirt and sobbed. That's where he found her. She didn't hear him approach. Vampires moved like shadows, and this one was darker than most. She only looked up when his boots stopped inches from her face, polished black leather that didn't belong in the forest. He crouched down. She flinched back, but she was too broken to run. "Easy," he said, his voice low and calm. "I'm not going to hurt you." She laughed bitterly through her tears. Everyone hurt her. He studied her for a long moment, his eyes strange and ancient in the moonlight, red, but not with hunger, with something she couldn't name. "What happened?" he asked. "Nothing," she whispered. "I'm nothing. That's what happened." His jaw tightened. He stood, then bent and lifted her into his arms before she could protest. She was too weak to fight. The bond break had drained everything from her. "Bring the carriage," he said to someone she couldn't see. "A guard, maybe. And send word to the castle. We're bringing a guest." "My lord," a voice said hesitantly. "She's a wolf." "I'm aware. She's bleeding." A pause. "From a bond break. Then we move quickly." Thea's vision swam. The last thing she heard before darkness took her was his voice, quiet and firm. "Carefully. Don't jostle her." She woke to softness. Silk sheets, a canopy bed, warm firelight flickering on stone walls. For a confused moment, she thought she was dead. Then the pain in her chest reminded her she wasn't that lucky. She sat up slowly, her body aching. She was still in her mother's dress, though someone had removed her torn stockings and muddy shoes. A glass of water sat on the bedside table. She stared at it, suspicious. The door opened. He stepped inside, tall and composed, dressed in black that made him look like he'd stepped out of a painting. The vampire who'd found her in the forest. His red eyes found hers immediately. "You're awake," he said. His voice was too gentle for someone who was supposed to be a monster. She pulled the blankets up to her chin. Where am I? My castle. He moved to the chair by the fireplace and sat, putting distance between them. Like he knew she was afraid. You collapsed at the border. I brought you here. Why? Because you were crying, and I don't ignore broken things. She didn't know what to say to that. Vampires were supposed to be cruel, heartless. Everyone said so. But he'd carried her here, put her in a bed softer than anything she'd ever touched. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. He tilted his head, considering her. Nothing you're not willing to give. I don't believe you. You don't have to. He stood and moved to the door, pausing with his hand on the handle. There's food in the sitting room. Eat, rest. No one will disturb you. His eyes met hers one last time. You're safe here. Then he was gone. Thea sat in the enormous bed, staring at the closed door, waiting for the trap to spring. It never did. 3 days, and he hadn't touched her. She didn't know if that terrified her more. The servants brought food 3 times a day, warm bread, roasted meat, fresh fruit. She stared at it like it might bite her. Poison, maybe, or a test. She'd gone hungry before when the pack had been angry with her. Missed meals were a common punishment for being too slow, too clumsy, too plain. She picked at the bread on the first day, ate a few berries on the second. By the 3rd day, her stomach hurt too much to ignore. That's when he came back. The door opened at sunset, and he stepped inside, carrying a tray himself. No servants, just him. He set it on the table by the window, then looked at her. You haven't been eating, he said. She tensed. Here it comes. The anger. The punishment. I'm not hungry, she lied. He pulled out a chair and sat, picking up a piece of bread from the tray. He took a bite, chewed, swallowed. Then he pushed the plate toward her. It's not poisoned, he said quietly. Her face burned. I didn't. Yes, you did. He leaned back in the chair, watching her. You thought I was fattening you up for something, feeding you before the slaughter, maybe. She didn't deny it. He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. I'm Lucien, vampire king of the Northern Territories. I've ruled for 12 centuries, and in all that time, I've never kept prisoners. I don't torture. I don't play games. His eyes found hers. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. If I wanted to hurt you, I would have done it in the forest. Then why am I here? Because you needed somewhere to be. It was such a simple answer. Too simple. Nothing in her life had ever been that easy. She stood on shaking legs and moved to the table. Sat across from him, picked up a piece of bread and ate it slowly, waiting for something terrible to happen. Nothing did. He watched her eat in silence, his expression unreadable. When she finished half the plate, he stood. Better, he said. Then he paused at the door, glancing back. Why haven't you hurt me yet? She asked suddenly, the question bursting out before she could stop it. He looked at her for a long moment. Why would I hurt what's mine? Then he left. She sat frozen, those words echoing in her head. What's mine? She didn't know if that was a threat or a promise. He found her crying in the library at 3 a.m. and said nothing. Just sat across from her until she stopped. Thea hadn't meant to cry. She'd been doing so well, going 2 whole days without breaking down. But she'd found a mirror in the library, a tall, ornate thing that showed her exactly what Dorian had seen. Mousy brown hair, small features, eyes too big for her face. Nothing special, nothing beautiful, not pretty enough. She'd sunk to the floor, pressing her hands over her mouth to muffle the sobs. That's where Lucian found her, curled up against the bookshelf with tears streaming down her face. He didn't ask what was wrong, didn't tell her to stop. He just pulled a chair over, sat down, and waited. Eventually, she ran out of tears. "Better?" he asked quietly. She wiped her face with her sleeve. "Do you ever get tired of finding me like this?" "No." She looked up at him, confused. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. "I've been alive for 1,200 years, he said. "I've seen empires rise and fall. I've watched humans invent light and flight and wage wars over dust. And in all that time, I've never once kept anyone here longer than a night. Why not? Because they bored me." He said it simply, without arrogance. They wanted power or immortality or protection. They saw me as a tool, a means to an end. His eyes met hers. "You don't want anything from me." "I don't have anything to give." "You have yourself," he said. "That's more than most." She didn't understand. She'd spent her entire life being told she wasn't enough. Too plain, too quiet, too forgettable. And here was this ancient, powerful being telling her she was more. "Why do you care?" she whispered. Because no one else did. The words hit her like a fist to the chest. She looked away, fresh tears threatening. "Come," he said, standing and offering his hand. "Let me show you something." She hesitated, then took it. His skin was cool but not cold. He led her through the castle, up a winding staircase, and out onto a balcony overlooking the gardens. The moon was full again. A month since her rejection. She'd barely noticed time passing. "The sun doesn't kill us," Lucian said, leaning against the railing. "That's a myth. It just weakens us. Burns if we stay too long." He glanced at her. "I haven't seen a sunrise in 800 years. "Why not?" "Because I got tired of burning." She understood that. She'd been burning her whole life. They stood in silence, watching the gardens. Then she spoke, the question slipping out before she could stop it. "Do you ever get lonely?" "Every day." "Then why stay alone?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "Because alone is safer than disappointed." She knew that feeling too. Her sleeve had ridden up while she was crying, and she tugged it down quickly, but not quickly enough. His eyes caught on the old scars, thin white lines crisscrossing her forearm. His entire body went still. When he looked at her again, his eyes were solid black, no red left at all. Power rolled off him in waves, making the air pressure drop. "Who?" he asked, his voice deadly calm. She pulled her sleeve down further. "It doesn't matter." "Who?" "The pack. When I was young, it was just..." She swallowed hard. "Discipline. It's normal." "Thea." He said her name like a command. "Who hurt you?" She met his eyes and saw rage there, ancient and absolute. But his hands didn't shake. His voice didn't rise. He just stood there, waiting for an answer. And she knew with absolute certainty that whoever she named would die. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. He already knew. Her father's beta arrived at the castle gates with a message. The alpha wanted his daughter back. Thea was in the gardens when the servant found her, panic written all over the young vampire's face. "My lady, the king requests your presence in the throne room." Her blood turned to ice. She followed on numb legs, her mind racing. Dorian wanted her back. Why? He'd rejected her, humiliated her, called her plain in front of everyone, unless his new chosen mate had rejected him. The rumors had reached even the castle. Dorian had tried to claim another Luna, a beautiful she-wolf from a neighboring pack. But she'd taken one look at him and said, no, publicly. Now he wanted Thea back. The throne room doors opened, and she stepped inside. Lucian sat on his throne, dark and imposing, his expression carved from stone. The beta stood before him, nervous and sweating despite the cool air. Thea's entrance made the beta turn. His eyes widened. "Thea," he said, relief flooding his voice. "Thank the goddess. We've been looking everywhere for you." She said nothing. "The Alpha made a mistake," the beta continued, addressing Lucian now. "He wishes to renegotiate the, arrangement. She's his mate. Moon chosen. He has a right to reclaim her." "She's not property to be returned," Lucian said, his voice flat. "With respect, my lord, she's wolf kind. Pack law applies. He's her alpha and her mate. She belongs—" "Choose your next words carefully," Lucian interrupted, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The beta fell silent. Lucian's eyes found Thea's. "Do you want to go back?" The question hung in the air. She should say yes. Pack bonds were sacred. Mates were fated. Dorian was her alpha. But he'd rejected her, destroyed her. And now he wanted her back because he'd been humiliated? Her voice cracked. She cleared her throat. "Will there be war if I stay?" "There will be no war," Lucian said, "because there will be no negotiation. My lord, the Alpha will not accept." The doors burst open. Dorian strode in, flanked by his enforcers, his eyes wild and furious. He looked older than she remembered, desperate. "Thea," he said, ignoring Lucian entirely. "Come here, now." She stayed exactly where she was. His jaw clenched. "I made a mistake. I was hasty. But you're mine. You've always been mine. The bond is broken," she said quietly. "You broke it. I can remake it. I choose you, Thea. Come home." "Why?" she asked, and her voice was stronger now. "Because I'm suddenly pretty enough? Or because your chosen Luna rejected you, and you need someone to stand beside you so you don't look weak?" His face flushed red. "You're my mate. I was your mate. You gave that up." He moved toward her, rage twisting his features. "You don't get to say no to me. I'm your alpha, not anymore." Lucian's voice cut through the room like a blade. He stood, and suddenly the space felt smaller, his presence overwhelming. "She's under my protection. You have no claim here." "She's just an Omega," Dorian spat. "She's nothing." "She's my queen," Lucian said, his voice dropping to something lethal and quiet. "And you're out of time." Dorian lunged. He didn't make it 2 steps before Lucian moved, faster than sight, catching him by the throat and slamming him into the marble floor. The enforcers rushed forward. Lucian's guards appeared from the shadows, blocking them. Lucian crouched over Dorian, his hand tight around the Alpha's neck, his eyes black pits. "She said no," he said softly. "That's the only answer that matters." He looked at Thea, his expression shifting, asking permission. She stared at Dorian, pinned and powerless, and felt nothing. No bond, no pull, just emptiness where the hurt used to be. "Let him go," she said. Lucian released him immediately. Dorian gasped, clutching his throat, his eyes wide with shock. His enforcers pulled him to his feet. Thea stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. I, Thea Morven, reject you, Dorian Hale, as my mate and alpha. The words hung in the air. The phantom bond, already broken, snapped completely. She felt it dissolve like smoke, leaving nothing behind. Dorian stared at her like she'd stabbed him. You can't. I just did. She met his eyes. You called me plain, mousy, not pretty enough. You rejected me in front of everyone I've ever known, and now you want me back because you're embarrassed? She shook her head. I'm not your consolation prize. Dorian opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time since she'd known him, he had nothing to say. Lucian gestured to the guards. Escort them out. If they return, kill them. The guards moved forward. Dorian cast one last desperate look at Thea, then let himself be led away. The doors closed. Silence fell. Thea's knees gave out. Lucian caught her before she hit the ground, his arms solid and sure around her. You didn't have to defend me, she whispered. Yes, he said quietly, his hand still bloody from Dorian's throat. I did. Lucian carried her to the gardens, because she asked him to. Not back to her room, not to some quiet corner. The gardens, where moonlight pooled on stone paths and night-blooming flowers filled the air with sweetness. He set her down on a bench and moved to leave, giving her space. Stay, she said. He stayed. They sat in silence for a long time, the sounds of the castle distant and unimportant. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them together in her lap. He's going to tell everyone, she said finally, that I rejected him, that I chose a vampire over my own kind. Does that matter to you? She thought about it. A month ago, it would have destroyed her. Now? No, she said and meant it. Lucian was quiet beside her, his presence steady and calm. She turned to look at him, really look at him. He'd killed for her, defended her, stood between her and everything that had ever hurt her. Why? She asked. Why what? Why care? You said you've been alone for centuries. Why break that now? For me? He met her eyes, and something in his expression shifted, softened. Because you're real, he said simply. Everyone who comes here wants something. Power, immortality, safety. They see what I can give them. He paused. You don't see me that way. How do I see you? Like I'm a person, he said. Not a king, not a weapon. Just someone who found you crying in the forest. His lips curved slightly. You've never asked me for anything. Not once. You've already given me everything. A room and some meals. Kindness, she corrected. You gave me kindness. No one's ever done that before. His expression tightened. She looked down at her hands, at the scars peeking out from under her sleeves. I'm not beautiful, she said quietly. Dorian was right about that. He was an idiot. She laughed, startled. Lucian shifted closer, his hand hovering near hers, not quite touching. You are beautiful, he said, his voice low and certain, not in the way shallow men count beauty, but in the ways that matter. You're kind, resilient, brave enough to reject an alpha in his own territory. His eyes held hers. You survived everything they did to you, and still found it in yourself to cry over flowers in a library. That's beautiful. Her throat tightened. You barely know me. I know enough. He finally took her hand, his fingers cool against hers. I know you flinch when people move too fast. She stared at him, this ancient vampire king who'd seen empires rise and fall, who'd chosen solitude for 800 years, who'd found her broken and bleeding and decided she was worth keeping. "I don't want to go back," she whispered. "Then don't. I don't want to be alone anymore." "You're not." His hand tightened on hers. "You haven't been since I found you." She looked at their joined hands, hers small and scarred, his pale and steady. Then she looked up at him, at his red eyes that saw her, really saw her, and she made a choice. She leaned forward and kissed him. He went completely still, like he was afraid to move. She pulled back, suddenly uncertain. "Sorry, He kissed her back. It was soft and careful, his hand coming up to cup her face like she was something precious. When he pulled away, his eyes had gone dark red, but his touch remained gentle. "I'm not beautiful," she said again, because she needed him to understand. "You are to me," he said. "You always will be." She believed him. For 1,200 years he'd chosen solitude. Now he'd choose her every day for eternity. The blood bond ceremony was held at midnight under a full moon. The vampire court gathered in the great hall, hundreds of them, ancient and powerful, and watching with curious eyes as Thea stood before Lucian in a gown of deep crimson. She wasn't afraid. The high priest spoke in a language older than memory, his words echoing off the stone walls. Lucian took her hand, his expression solemn and focused. "The bond requires blood," he said quietly, for her ears only. "Freely given. Are you certain?" She looked at him. This man who'd defended her, protected her, seen her, who'd killed the alpha who hurt her, and then given her the choice to stay or go. "I'm certain," she said. He lifted her wrist to his mouth, his eyes holding hers. "This will hurt for a moment." "I know." His fangs pierced her skin. She gasped at the sharp pain, then the strange warmth that followed. Power rushed through her, his power, ancient and vast and gentle. The bond snapped into place, not like the false wolf bond that had shattered, but something deeper, permanent, chosen. He sealed the wound with his tongue, then offered his own wrist. She took it without hesitation, pressing her mouth to his skin. His blood was cool and tasted like night air and something indefinable, something that was just him. The bond flared bright and certain between them. The court erupted in applause. Lucian pulled her close, his hand on the small of her back, and whispered against her temple. "My queen." 6 months later, Thea stood in the throne room addressing the assembled court. A delegation from the Crescent Moon Pack had arrived to negotiate a treaty. She wore midnight blue, her hair pinned up, her posture straight and confident. She'd grown into her role. The servants respected her. The court deferred to her. She gave orders, and they were followed. The plain girl who'd been rejected had become a queen, and she'd done it by being herself. Lucian sat on his throne, watching her with quiet pride. The wolves entered, led by a new alpha. Dorian had been deposed months ago, stripped of his title for his weakness. The new alpha booed respectfully, but it was the whispers from the younger pack members that made Lucian's hand tighten on the arm of his throne. "That's her? The plain one? She doesn't look like much." Thea heard them. Lucian saw her spine stiffen just slightly. He started to stand to defend her, but she caught his eye and shook her head minutely. "I've got this." She turned to face the delegation fully, her gaze sweeping over them with cool authority. "Welcome to the Northern Territories," she said, her voice carrying through the hall. "I am Queen Thea, mate and chosen of King Lucian. You're here to discuss trade agreements and border security." One of the younger wolves muttered something. She heard it, so did everyone else. She smiled, and it was sharp. "If you have something to say," she said pleasantly, "please speak clearly. I've learned not to tolerate whispers in my court." The wolf paled and fell silent. She continued as if nothing had happened, outlining the terms of the treaty with precision and confidence. The alpha agreed to everything. He'd be a fool not to. She was offering fair terms, and crossing the vampire queen would mean crossing the king. When the delegation left, Thea returned to Lucian's side. He took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "You were magnificent," he said quietly. "I learned from the best." He pulled her down to sit on the arm of his throne, his hand resting on her waist. The court had dispersed, leaving them alone in the vast room. "Do their words still hurt?" he asked. She considered it. A year ago, being called plain would have destroyed her. Now? "No," she said. "They see what they expect to see. It doesn't change what I am." "And what are you?" She looked at him, at this man who'd found her broken and helped her become whole, who'd given her a crown not because she needed one, but because she'd earned it. "Yours," she said. "And mine. Finally." He kissed her, deep and sure, and she felt the bond sing between them, chosen and choosing, forever. The plain girl who wasn't pretty enough had become the queen who was everything, and she'd never been happier in her life.